Testing 1, 2. Can you check YouTube to see if it's on? You don't have to sit behind the pole if you don't want to. I can also move the pole. We'll see.
But if you sit behind the pole, don't shake it.
Should be right. It's like a fancy. I just put it here, or over on the side. Can you turn your volume up? Make sure I can hear me. That's good. All right. What about the camera angle? It's probably 15 seconds behind. I think it's good. Where is the... There we go. Is it better? And then it probably went full screen now.
If you want to move it a little closer to you, could, but besides that.
Can always edit and post. Some people aren't going to the office yet. Plus our team's remote, so I figured I could record it. That's cool. I hadn't used, if anyone has Macs, it just hooks up your phone as your webcam. Yeah. And what's cool is any program will work. So it doesn't have to be like Mac programs. So it's like, now it's streaming to OBS. And then I took OBS and you just mirrored it. So it has the slides and like a video feed. Because that was one of the problems is when you go to live events, you're like hearing someone speak and you're like, what is he talking about? I can't see anything. So I'm hoping it'll work. This is my first test. I just tried it today. So we'll see if it works.
Your Mac can handle OBS and streaming?
Yeah. It's the brand. I just got this last week. I wouldn't have tried it with the last one. This is like an M2. Like it just came out. My last one would be like on fire right now. Like I don't think I could ever shut the fans off on that thing. It was like, I guess, I don't know what it's like 3 or 4 years where it rotates. We'll wait till Jake comes up, but yeah, I think it looks good. And the sound's coming through?
Yeah.
Oh, these are cool too. The microphones go from, there's 2 of them, so I can have 2 speakers go to that capture card that goes directly into OBS so you can hear me. So if I move farther away from the microphone, I don't have to like worry about it. I'm still learning that one too. I was trying to, this will work, it's cool at live events. I went to Cisco Live. Yeah, they make good stuff. It's like a Chinese company that makes the drones and they make gimbals and stuff. So we have a few Red Hatters here. So while we wait for Jake, I guess are there people actually watching on YouTube? Can you see if there's like...
There's a few people.
It's what?
Colin.
Colin's just, he wants to mess with me? That's my coworker.
9 people watching.
Nice, that's it. So my name's Sean Cavanaugh. I'm a technical marketing manager here. Previously Cumulus Networks and Cisco, like some of you. I think we have a few more Red Hatters here. So maybe Red Hatters will introduce themselves. Yeah. You want to introduce yourselves to the group or you don't have to?
Okay, that's totally fine. Yeah. So my name is Mauricio.
Yeah.
I work at the IT infrastructure. I am one of the infrastructure architects, and I'm responsible for looking at everything that runs behind the walls in this company. But yeah, not that much.
It's super fun working IT for IT nerds,
Yes,
I'm sure.
Yes, yes.
No one's looking over your shoulder with that.
Yeah. It's like a thankless job, I'm sure. Very thankless. We have Ben. Oh, there we have Jake coming in. We have my co-op. I have him till December, Alex, here. He got guilted into coming after hours, but he doesn't have anything better to do, so. Yeah. He made the mistake of telling us he's 20, so he can't get the free beers. And then here's Jake. So Jake and me have been trying to put on community meetup for a while. We've been talking about it. It's something we used to do like pre-pandemic. I know it's been very weird for me. I have 3 kids, 3 born during the pandemic, 6 and 8. And you can imagine how much fun that was for the first year of the pandemic. And like one of the reasons I got like love working at Red Hat was doing things like this, like after hours, worrying about the technology, not necessarily the politics, even though they go hand in hand sometimes. But like the passion, I guess, for like technology is really, really cool opportunity to work on like Ansible stuff.
Is this the first one back?
Yeah,
Person?
it's the first one. First one in the triangle. I don't know if it's necessarily. I don't know how many have been happening.
Oh yeah, there's one in Minneapolis, Chicago. They've kept going kind of. I asked if folks wanted to do it virtually, and nobody said anything. So I said okay. So.
Yeah, so it's been kind of slowly restarting city by city. Lots of different types of meetups, like the Linux meetups, the user groups. Yeah, it's been kind of. I know a bunch shut down around here. Like we used to have a networking users group that we used to do. There's a bunch of different things. Anything else you want to say? As you started, you're good. All right, I'm just gonna get started. I'm not gonna go super long since it's the first one. I don't want to like scare anyone away from doing meetups. We're just testing the waters, and I'm testing recording here, so I don't. Sorry for the people watching live. I don't know if this is actually working very well, but I thought I'd attempt it to make it fun, and maybe people will be jealous that they have pizza and food or some semblance of community back. So this talks on Terraform. Let me see what I put. Terraform and Ansible. So this comes up a lot right now. I thought it'd be kind of a cool, interesting talk because this is coming up a lot in my job. And like, for better or worse, at Red Hat, when we talk to customers or community or prospects, depending on what it is, we tend to, it's very cool. We're thought as like thought leadership in a lot of accounts we go into, but they're not necessarily even care about Red Hat technology. And what I mean by that is like me and Ben were talking about this today is like when we try to teach someone Ansible, we have a learning curve sometimes depending on that type of IT engineer of what they're even learning, which is Linux, using like SSH clients they've never used before, learning Git and learning like the concept of source of truth, learning like different tooling that like may be really native to a system administrator, but like very different to someone who's like a classical network engineer, like my background, right? Or they're a storage engineer. It just is a very different background. So one of the things that comes up all the time with Ansible accounts right now is because Terraform is extremely popular, has a very similar story to Ansible. HashiCorp is a very cool company, and they have a lot of very cool products like Packer, Terraform, Vault, Console. There's probably like 4 others off the top of my head. Nomad. They have lots of really cool products, but the one we hear about most is Terraform, so I thought that'd be kind of a cool subject. And like, I think it surprises a lot of people is I don't really see Terraform or Packer, which are the ones I use the most probably, as competitors in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I see them as just very different tools that like often work in conjunction. So like actually in like my environments for building demos and workshops for customers, we actually use all of them. We actually build images with Packer, but Packer is really just packaging, hence the name. We use Ansible to actually set up the images, and Packer's just wrapping an image. But then I find Ansible is much better at distributing images than Packer is. It's much faster. So then I kind of orchestrate like, okay, I have Packer create one AMI or Google Compute image, and then I use Ansible to spread those images across. And then I might use Terraform to provision it, and then I use Ansible again for any like last minute configuration on it. So I end up like almost like this bubble of the tools each time as I kind of build it out, because it just depends on what I'm doing. And like sometimes it sounds super complicated, but my Packer file is like 20 lines of like Packer HCL. The Terraform sometimes is embedded in whatever tool I'm using. It's just provisioning a virtual machine. And the playbooks, it depends like what they're doing. And that's where my Swiss Army knife is obviously going to be Ansible. So I try to solve all things with Ansible. So I thought I'd cover like what we're doing with Terraform, a couple things, and then it'll probably be over and we can chat about whatever people want to. So we'll talk about cloud automation in general and like where we see Ansible versus Terraform, why you would use them together, and like that kind of like I use it, but where we see other folks using it all the time. And then I'll try to demo, but it's kind of awkward here on the TV, but I'll try to show something really quickly. It's pretty easy. And then we actually have self-drive labs. So we use a service called Instruct to actually embed labs. It uses Google Compute under the covers. So we can actually, you can like go home, your whole team can actually do it. There's no cost, no login window, no reg wall. It's just meant to learn. And it's very similar to Katacoda if you've ever played with that. It was like a popular tool maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. But it's just, it's actually kind of like inception of of the tools is it's teaching you Terraform, but it actually used Terraform and Ansible to build the lab. So it's kind of like we say drinking your own champagne. Yeah, what's up?
Sorry to cut you off, but the slides are not actually showing on YouTube.
Oh, they're not
When
moving?
you're showing like a second screen, you're actually showing your browser. So when you flip the slide,
Uh,
they show here.
If I just leave it like that, does it work? Maybe it's a 15-second delay.
Yeah, it's take a while. But the screen that you were actually showing here was the other screen, not that. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. Let me know if that one flips. I only showed one slide, so hopefully it was.
Yeah.
Did it flip?
I don't know yet. That way, I'll let you know. You're going to the computer now.
It's like,
And no, didn't flip. Still stuck in the first slide.
Maybe it's OBS.
I wonder if.
Your video isn't mirroring your computer. Like the timestamp on the live stream is 6:11 p.m.
Oh, is it just like a screenshot? Oh, it's a screen capture, not a
Yeah.
It's not a video feed. One sec.
I think that was right when you were testing it earlier.
Let's see what this does. 1 second. Oh no, I don't even know if I know how to. Has anyone else used a?
Something's coming up. The black screen now on YouTube.
Oh, very good. Ooh, beautiful.
Yeah, that looks live.
I don't know if it's gonna just show one window.
Yeah, try that. Try that. Might work.
See if that did it.
We're a little behind.
Yeah, I'll let you know when it happens.
Yes, it's working. It's working.
I'm just gonna not go full screen because I think it's like
Yep.
doing window manager.
I think you can go full screen now.
Yeah, looks good now.
Yeah.
We'll see. I'm still worried it's just showing like a screenshot of a moment in time.
I'm watching you edit it.
Oh, so it's going. All right.
Yeah.
It's probably just when I flipped from my workstation to here. All right. Well, learning curve. Sorry for that, but it won't be long, I promise. So I'm not gonna go full screen.
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah.
I think it's risky.
Doesn't hurt.
All right. So what I did is kind of like I talked to a bunch of different teams around Red Hat, customers, and my own experience just being in IT, and we kind of came up with like a bunch of use cases. Now, I always say like with Ansible use cases, it's not an exhaustive list. It's just ideas and categories for them. So what's really cool with Ansible, since it's procedural automation, it's good and bad because it's bad in the fact that we can almost automate anything. So sometimes customers come with like crazy requests, like I want to automate this point of sale system that and I have 1 million of them or something crazy. That's just like, well, we could do it, but like we're not really priced for this, and we don't like have knowledge of this particular use case. It could be bizarre depending on like what we're trying to automate. So the cool part though is like if we categorize this, the idea of the use cases isn't to say these are the 6 use cases we have. It's just to have ideas of like, oh, these are cool things I can do with automation to help save time no matter what I'm doing, right? And that's kind of like a cool way to look at automation in general, is not be like forced to like, these are the 6 things you can do. And that's one of the cool things about Ansible automation or any of the DevOps tools out there is you're not kind of guardrailed into one particular niche. So when you buy like a management tool from a company, a lot of times it has pre-built use cases that are really good and turnkey, but it's not very easy to add additional use cases. You have to open an RFE with the company and they add a button or something. What's nice with Ansible is it can do anything, but sometimes it can do anything, and that can be complicated. But there's a bunch of cool stuff that I do in labs, and I've seen people do in just talking to customers. So there's like orchestration, right? So orchestration to me is we can automate anything, and a lot of times when I deploy an application, we're looking at just the cloud part. So what if I want to add it to a F5 load balancer? I want to add access list to a firewall, or I want to add like AWS Direct Connect from that cloud locally. So there's like a bunch of use cases like that where it's like orchestrating not just the cloud part, but all the different IT infrastructure in there, like a Nutanix device or a Cisco switch or whatever it happens to be. Cloud migration, a lot of times you have to decide like what you're trying to automate, and it's very particular to each organization. So it's a very broad use case. But a lot of times this is just like taking like on-prem to cloud, one cloud to another cloud, cloud like virtual machine to cloud native, depending on like what your organization is trying to do, and figuring out like what do I need to do, and then trying to automate that procedurally. And this is something Ansible is really good at because it's just doing tasks. It's just a honey-do list. It's not like, it's a different tool than Terraform, as you'll see in a minute. Infrastructure visibility, this is one I like across like all use cases, which is we take facts, Ansible facts, structured data about objects, and then we can transform them into dynamic documentation. So like I use this even within my own group of technical marketing managers to look at all the regions they're launching stuff in clouds, because people forget. It's very common where they forget they've launched something, IT gets a bill, or something gets hacked because it was left on, and then we get in trouble. So we just keep kind of a snapshot in time of what's happening, where is stuff going. And it's not a monitoring tool by any means, Ansible, not at all, but we can work in concert with different tools to kind of like aggregate information into like a single pane of glass. Cloud operations, this is where like day two operations, like if I want to increase memory to an existing virtual machine container, I want to add storage, I want to upgrade the image type entirely. Like you can automate those just like any human operator would do. So it's like operating, like I would press this button, then this within the cloud construct. Automated troubleshooting, this goes into like event-driven Ansible. Right, so you have the architect here, Ben, that was his baby. So event-driven Ansible is really cool as we've kind of codified the same idea of Ansible, right? Like anyone can automate with Python or Go or something, but Ansible helps up-level that and lowers the barrier. Now event-driven Ansible does the same thing, is you can have a bunch of plugins, it up-levels it, so you're not like the first person to write a plugin for Kafka, or you're the first person to write a plugin for whatever it happens to be. It's just plugins you grab, you fill out something, and it's just as easy as a playbook to like start getting an event-driven Ansible. And it can be like dumb simple for cloud stuff. Like if you have a VM come online, you could have an event kick off immediately with CloudTrails, and then have like it check, is this image allowed? Are we allowed to boot this type? Is this too much memory? Is it allowed in this region? Does it have the proper tagging on it? It can be like that simple. You don't even have to turn it off. A lot of people want self-healing infrastructure. You could just have it like Slack message someone saying like, hey, this looks fishy, right? So you can adopt automation incrementally. And that's really powerful too, because you could have automation coming from different tools. You might be using Terraform, you might be using CloudFormation templates, you might be using the web console. So if you have something out of band of all of those, you can kind of keep track of it. Optimization kind of goes hand in hand with cloud ops. Is like, let's say we like want to right size something, or you're saying like, hey, I log into my servers, I'm only using 10 out of 20, why don't I turn these off? Or why don't I just, like my team, we just automate where we shut down everything on time zones and then turn them back on by the time we wake up. So we don't have to worry about it. We're able to like reduce our bill for cloud expenditures by like 30%, like really quickly, just automating like shutdowns and turn-ons. Business continuity, another big one like migration. But this could be just automating backups. It could be that dumb, like a one-task playbook. It's just automating the backups, automating, there's policies within the cloud. So we actually have modules for different like business continuity services within those: Azure, Google Cloud, AWS. So it's just automating them and treating them as code, not necessarily just the cloud infrastructure, but the IAM policies themselves or what's in there. And then compliance kind of goes with that, right? Is just treating everything as code. I think there's like this big push with my product managers where we're like operations as code. It's not just infrastructure as code, but like everything's treated as code. So compliance could be like, hey, like if this guy was let go or moved companies, we nuked his AWS account, but he still has an Azure account and an LDAP account. Like it's really, that's something that automation would be like really good in IT infrastructure, right? To make sure like we're syncing the removal of users across many different tools. So Ansible could fit in there, or it could just be policies for ACLs or security groups across multiple roles to make sure like, hey, this is compliant. Whether or not we're using infrastructure as code, I do know my security rules are compliant. So again, you can adopt automation incrementally. You'll notice on the bottom, deployment and retirement, we can provision infrastructure. There's tons of tools that can do that. This is where Terraform fits in really, really well. Terraform is a declarative language of HCL files for immutable infrastructure. And what that means is I can just create a file and say like, I want 2 VMs with this size and this region, press a button and it comes online. And I would say, even as an Ansible person who's written tons of stuff, I think they've pretty much won that market. They do a much more popular job of doing that. And one of the reasons is teardowns, in my opinion, is when I want to destroy infrastructure, Ansible, the way we have is procedural, which means I have to know the order to delete it. It's not that hard, but like it's kind of annoying. And if something goes wrong and you don't have someone who's like trained on that particular cloud, it can be frustrating where they're like, I don't know, this VM's still here. And especially in early Ansible days, we didn't have some of the features we do now, like throttling for the AWS API and stuff. So like you would get in these situations where like it would delete all the tags off the instance but not shut it off. So then you'd have these instances sitting there, and I call them like orphan instances. And that costs companies tons of money, I'm sure. And I'm sure all kinds of proprietary tools and things have been invented. The SDK has gotten lots better, so like all the tools have gotten better, but Terraform came in, and Terraform naturally did a immutable, meaning like this exists, and when I want to turn it off, I say destroy, and it kills it. So they've kind of owned those use cases, but the point of this diagram is to show like, hey, there's a bunch of stuff we can automate besides just provisioning cloud resources and destroying them. So I think you can see like, yeah, you could do that with Ansible, but it might be better to do with Terraform, or it might be better to do with a native cloud language. So like you also have CloudFormation templates, you have Microsoft Azure Resource Manager, and then I don't have it up here, but there's a Google one too. It's like the same idea. There's a declarative language built into most public clouds to deploy it. In fact, I'd have to look at Terraform's source code again, but at one point it was using CloudFormation templates under the hood. It would like basically transmute. I don't know if that's true anymore, but it'd be something to look at. But it's the same idea, right? Is we can create a declarative file that says this exists, and when you want to destroy it, it's the same file. So there's no like extra. So if you wrote this in Ansible, unfortunately, a lot of times that meant I almost had two playbooks, one to spin it up and one to spin it down. So that's where like all the advantages we have in other use cases weren't so great for that like one use case. So what we try to do from a company standpoint, which may surprise people, is if someone's using Terraform, we're like, hell yes, we'll work with you. On the community side, obviously, we don't have salespeople there, so we don't care. And we actually have lots of blogs and stuff outlining like how you can use these tools together, how it makes sense, what do we do, because we obviously use it. And like, where can you use them together? So imagine like if I'm deploying an application again, is I can use Ansible, like kick off a workflow in Ansible, or just a playbook. I call them workflows because in our like product, we actually have like you can just drag and drop multiple playbooks in order. But you could just use a playbook if you have no intention of ever having the Ansible product. You could just have the playbook do like do this, then do this, then do this. And you can have multiple plays within a playbook. So you could say like, configure my cloud, configure my Nutanix, configure my Cisco, configure my Red Hat stuff, and then the playbook ends. So it's just orchestrating multiple automation workflows. And in this case, one of them happens to be Terraform in that workflow. So it could be provision stuff in the cloud, but Terraform doesn't really do Linux automation. So once it spins up a Linux virtual machine or container, then you could have Ansible do things to that actual end managed devices. And that's kind of one of the big differentiators. Some of the like arguments will come, which will be like, well, if all my infrastructure is immutable, I don't need Ansible. I've never seen that infrastructure yet. Usually people are always modifying it. But yeah, it's true in like some containerized environments, like if your organization's ready, like you would destroy it, recreate it, and then redeploy it. And that's common. But usually like even in those environments, you have standard IT infrastructure, you have like permanent things, you have policies around things out of band of that. So in my mind, there's like infinite use cases for both tools to be like used all the time. Orchestrate, extend, I'm trying to see if there's anything else I want to call on here. Secure and manage infrastructure states, import and use existing Terraform manifests. So what it's saying is Ansible can just use existing Terraform in your environments. And we'll kind of show some examples of that. So what we did to like simplify this is a lot of the stuff out there was community only, meaning it was just like not necessarily a Red Hatter or a Hashi employee that worked on it. So what we did is we took what exists there in the community and we decided to fully support it. So if someone buys a subscription from us, we can fully support it, but it also makes it easier for people even in the community to know like, oh, this is the official one, rather than just going on Galaxy and there's probably 25 different Terraform things, right? So it's really clear to say this is the one Red Hat's working on, so we just mark that with a star. And then if you're a customer, that's the one you have like a throat to choke, a hand to shake on the support of it. So it's pretty recent. We just released this in November. So even though this, like lots of people have been doing this for years now, the actual supported like collection has only existed since November. And the idea is pretty stupid simple. It's just like a playbook has a set of modules in it to run manifests from Terraform. So you just hand it a Terraform file in the same project directory structure as an Ansible playbook, and it can just run it. And what's really the coolest part about it is any of the variables returned from that provisioning, the IP addresses to access it, the SSH keys, anything that you need, Ansible automatically gets, it can store it, it can use it, and then you can automate it even further. So it's just kind of like orchestrating. That's like, in my mind, what true orchestration is when like 2 or more tools are working in automation together. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else on this slide. Details, there's 2 modules, not a ton. It's compatible with the old stuff if you use the community stuff. And for us, we're a little bit more nuanced in what we support as a company. It may not matter if you're just using community stuff, but we only support the big 3, the AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, and we only support the backends of their resource manager, GCS, and S3 for like storage, just to keep it like very clear. So we don't even support IBM Cloud yet. Like we may look at that, like the big corporation, but we don't support Rackspace or Alibaba yet. So it's just like, may not matter in North America, but it may matter if anyone else is remote in other countries, because other clouds are bigger in other countries. We also went the other way. So we have the supported collection for customers. Some people don't want to start with Ansible, they want to start with Terraform. That's how their organization works. So they may be using something like GitHub Actions or Azure DevOps, and they use Terraform in that workflow, but they still need Ansible. So we also went ahead and looked at the provider. So a provider for Terraform is going the other direction. So the collection is going Ansible to Terraform, and the provider is going from Terraform to Ansible. So it's the same idea as I provision something, but I start from the Terraform side, and then it will run Ansible automation. So it's like the same idea, just backwards. But it's fairly simple. And again, you'll see like, do you use these? And I'm like, I use both depending on like what I'm doing. Like if I'm pre-building images, sometimes I'll use Terraform first, but obviously like, since I'm an Ansible guy, like I'm probably biased, I'm gonna be using Ansible a lot more in the product, but we've done both. So I think hopefully that wins us karma, right? And it has some stipulations too. It only works with like Ansible Playbook. We haven't tested this with like some of our execution environments and things. I'm sure it would work. I just don't think it's gone that far. And this is, again, community supported only. So that means like open issues on GitHub, there'll probably be decent support, but it's not something we sell. It's just something that's like out there to help kind of the cloud community, anyone kind of automating. So just some quick use cases. Again, I don't want to go too long. So we can do a lot of different things. Again, these are a subset of ideas that we do stuff with, and not necessarily like, I couldn't point to a particular customer that's doing exactly this. I can think of different ones. Like there's a cool customer you want to look at is Asian Development Bank in the Philippines. I did a webinar with them, and they use Terraform and Ansible, all kinds in concert. That's probably one of the most interesting customers I've talked to. But like a lot of customers, since it's been pandemic, I haven't been in their face like asking the detailed questions. So I'm like, how are you using this? Where's this running? But we can use Ansible to do the normal automation, config management, security, all the operation stuff I talked about. We can use Ansible to even automate and template out manifests. So if you have manifests and you're like, well, I want manifests with these variables, I could put a survey in automation controller, someone fills it out, it creates a manifest, that manifest is then created, you run another playbook that then pushes that manifest to the cloud. So you can actually use them in concert like that really easily, where like, oh, I prefer a declarative approach rather than Ansible native, so but I like the front end of Ansible for whatever reason. It depends on the customer. And then that can deploy. Or you could have it pre-made, you just have like a suite of, like a survey pick between different manifests in there. So it becomes really easy. So you can kind of see like, you can use both tools depending on what you're up to. This is an example, well, I guess the laser won't work on the screen, but on the left, it's showing a HCL file, but as a Jinja template. So it just makes it a Jinja template as those little curly brackets. So if you've never messed with a Jinja template, it's just a templating engine. It's not even an Ansible thing. It's just another open source tool that we make use of within our community project and product. And it allows us to basically, like, someone could choose an option in the survey, which is this. It's very much like SurveyMonkey or Google Forms. It's just built into our product. They select something, it will fill out the variables within that manifest, and then we can launch it. So it can be that simple. It's just like really easy to like start automating away some of the operation headaches people have. So on the left, we have the task. Again, you see the state can be like enabled or delete. This is really easy for us to say, like, use the same exact Terraform manifest within a task to provision on or remove from a cloud. And then on the right is just like deploy. I'm trying to see what the difference is of these two. Oh, it's just pointing to a project path versus the backend config. So it's just showing different ones. And then this is a workflow. So I mentioned that previous. There's like a workflow is a feature in upstream projects AWX, products automation controller as part of the Ansible automation platform. And each of these where it says JT is a job template, and a job template's equivalent of an Ansible playbook. It's like a disaggregated playbook. Usually what you do is you take a playbook, and a job template is credentials plus inventory. What am I running this on? Credentials, how do I access this gear? And then a project, what playbook do I run? And then what's cool in a workflow setting is I can just drag and drop multiple playbooks. So I can say, create the project in this case, create the Terraform manifest, deploy the infrastructure. I can synchronize the inventory, and then I can do post-provisioning once I run it. So that's like a full orchestration. The green lines mean if the previous job is successful. The red lines mean if the previous job failed. So you can actually have like paths. And some of these can get really big. Obviously, like, this is a pretty nice one to fit on a slide, but you can kind of drag and drop as much as you want. And there's actually a third option, like always run. And you can actually even set facts between what we call nodes in that workflow, and you can share them between different machines. So pretty simple, but hopefully it makes sense. So I'll show like a quick demo, and hopefully it's still running, and then we'll be done. But are there any questions before I run into that? Is it still working on YouTube? All right, cool. Any questions, concerns? It's starting to get hot in here.
It's starting to get warm.
Yeah, I feel like the AC kicked off.
Usually the other way around. Usually it's cold in here and hot in the office.
This room hasn't had more than 10 people in it in a while.
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn this off.
I did. They folks here today for like the food thing.
All right, so this might be hard to see. So this is the demo platform that I showed before. And it's fairly simple. Like we don't do like, I try not to launch like 20 VMs like for demos we do, because the cost would be sky. So this is probably just, it's probably just one controller node, which is running on RHEL 8 or RHEL 9. I have to look at it. And then what's cool about this platform is it'll spin up an ephemeral cloud. So in this case, it's AWS. And I get full access to an AWS account. As soon as I click away, it'll destroy that cloud account to stop like people trying to Bitcoin mine me or whatever, which has happened so many times. It's like a never-ending battle of bots versus demos. It's like, it's pretty fun. But anyways, this lab, I'll give the links. I'll put them on, I'll send them out on the Meetup links. It's if you just Google for it, it's easy to find. It's like interactive labs on Red Hat, but I'll put a link in the chat after the meeting. And this one, you can just Control F on the labs page. You'll see Terraform there. And there's a bunch actually, like the first exercise is just using Terraform by itself for people who've never played with it before. And this is the second exercise, which is there's VS Code, and there's no controller in this case. It's just a controller node. So sometimes it get mixed up as we call it control node, a node where we're executing Ansible from. And then automation controller is the web UI. So I don't have the web UI in this one particular, like just to simplify it, because we're trying to teach one thing, one concept, not like all this other stuff. But in this case, there's like a very simple playbook called deploy. If it will let me, gotta move this down. I'll move this. So see that there's already a pre-existing manifest in here. There's one task, basic deploy of an instance. In this case, my coworker Nuno wrote a second task, and this is just tagged. So I run a playbook with a particular tag, and then it will turn it off. So it's really simple. It's a one task or a two task playbook in this case. But we're only using one task at a time. So we'll call it a one task playbook. So in a playbook, if you've never done, how many people have written playbooks before? So I think most people. So it's like a play. This is a play. It's telling you what collection's in there. The lab actually has you install the collection, cloud.terraform. And then this is Visual Studio Code, which is, I feel like basically won the IDE wars at this point. I lost my Atom. They finally made me turn it off. And then you just run a playbook. So this playbook will run. I already ran it just to save time because I didn't want people just to watch like text fly by a screen. And what you'll see if you get to do the demo is it's just going to spin up that HCL file. So in here, you'll see there's a lock. It's because I already ran it. But the Terraform file is a very simple file, and we'll see it is, well, it's longer than I thought. It's 83 lines, and that's one of the issues with immutable infrastructure is sometimes the declarative languages are quite verbose. So you can imagine 83 is not bad. I think it's like anyone who's done computer science. I bet Alex probably knows this from college. There's like a science for this where like a file shouldn't be no more than like 300 lines or something. There's some part I remember in engineering school where like humans can only keep so much information in our brain. So that's why like files break every 150 to 300 lines. And they're like, oh, import playbook or include this or import another module. So 83 is fine. But you can imagine if I had like a more dense application, I might have a 1,000-line immutable declarative file. And at that point, like, you start getting into another problem, which is like the classical pets versus cattle with any automation, which is like, is this file need to be this big? What could be defaulted? What could exist this long? So this is one of the problems of going down like immutable infrastructure solves all problems. I think it solves a lot, but if you try to move your entire organization to like massive 1,000-line declarative files, probably fails. And I have like examples of that where I've seen that happen with organizations. It's probably better to use tools in concert. I'd rather have lots of small immutable files under 300 lines that like a human can keep track of what the hell's happening inside that cloud thing. And you can use Ansible or other tools to help like spin them up in batches. I think trusting like what they're trying to solve with a massive file is that I know exactly everything on my cloud at any given time. So I've seen this with banks is they actually shut down all access to their cloud except through Terraform. The problem with that is like even if you have one way of getting to that cloud, but you have like two Terraform templates, like they can still collide. Like they're still going to have collision problems unless it's all one unit talking to that cloud. So that's where I kind of argue with like I feel like immutable infrastructure solves a lot of problems, and I actually use it myself. But like I don't think it's like going to solve all cloud problems where like they're trying to solve issues of like VMs we don't know about or the orphan problem I talked about earlier. But it's also hard because I don't think it's realistic for a lot of organizations to like shut down web UI access to their cloud or never allowed anyone to experiment. Because then like you get tribal knowledge, you'll lose it. Can you imagine if IT team at Red Hat never let you experiment or learn on it can backfire too, where like no one knows how the cloud works because they only know like how to press this button for something. So that's like one of my like I don't know my own learning over the last 5 years. So when that runs, you can actually just log in to that ephemeral cloud account and switch to London because the company we're using is based in the Netherlands, so it defaults to the EU West 1 or 2, whatever London is in Amazon. But you'll see that VM come on, and then I'll see if it'll actually. The directions are on the side here, and then I'll just run another playbook here. I'll go to deployment. Oh, I don't want that. And then in VS Code, there's a terminal built in, and I can just run this, and it should go pretty quickly. And it's just going to, again, in this case, it's just going to tear down that playbook. So what we'll see is it's removing instance. This is another potential drawback is it will work. It will definitely destroy that. But you'll notice something is there's no feedback mechanism on immutable downs. This is one thing I do like about Ansible is when you're learning, especially, I know exactly where it failed. Like I have to delete this, so I understand all the points along it. So it's very what I call like predictable failures. It fails where I expect it. If this immutable stuff fails, a lot of times you don't know what happened. However, for the most part, like these are natively supported by their cloud. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But if you're learning, I don't think it's a bad thing to use a tool like Ansible or even just AWS commands to learn how to provision and deprovision stuff, because it's good to understand like what the heck it's doing. And what it's doing is it's deleting those in order. It has to delete, the VM has to be deleted first, and it's got to delete the subnets, the security groups. It's got to go backwards. So it's kind of like unfolding like your physical infrastructure until it gets to the virtual private network. So it'd be a VPC for Amazon or just a network in Azure, and then it can delete that. And some clouds, they kind of take care of, I feel like Azure just takes care of some of that with the SDK. Amazon's very particular. Like you have to, it's like 5 or 6 AWS requests in a row. Google, I don't have enough experience with, I'll be honest. I got it working, but I never actually like looked under the covers. So we use Google Cloud, but I haven't dived enough into automating it to know how it works. But they're all a little bit different too. So if you're like what I found too is I have Terraform for Google and I have Terraform for Azure, and they're just different enough that like you got to look at the docs guide. It's not a nirvana either for multi-cloud. So like you still have to learn the cloud idiosyncrasies of like weirdness. But it helps, and it helps you learn it. And I honestly find learning the clouds from Terraform or Ansible or both is easier than sometimes looking at the docs. Like it's almost like, because you're kind of getting like the TLDR cliff notes of how this cloud works. You're like, I don't care about all this fluff, and then I go backwards. So that's kind of how I learn cloud, is like I learned it backwards from like doing a playbook, and I'm like, what the hell is an SG? And I like go look it up, and then like I know what that is. So as soon as that runs, it'll delete it, and this little micro VM should be off. So if we refresh, it's gone. And the lab goes a lot more detailed, but we're already longer than I said we'd be. So I will conclude today's community session, and we will open up. Oh yeah, open up the floor. You want to talk on the?
Yeah, sure. It doesn't matter either way.
You can talk on the microphone.
Yeah, sure. I just want to say a quick thank you for everybody to come out. If you haven't spoken to me yet, please say hi. And glad everybody came. If anybody has topics or wants to see something or wants to speak, please reach out to me. This meetup is very reactive in that I've spoken like 13 times. I would prefer to not do that again. I'm happy to do so, but if folks want to talk, everything from what you've used locally to even like, I got Ansible talking to an IoT device. Like it could be as simple as that. Yeah. So anything from open source use to like how you use it in your infrastructure. If you can talk about your job, we're happy to have you. Yeah.
I have a lot of things that I can talk about.
You're more than welcome to talk about it, man. So, but I just want to say thanks for everybody, especially the folks who tuned in too. Really appreciate everybody who came in and watched in the live stream. So, yeah, I'll hand it off to Sean.
I'm going to stop the stream, and hopefully people will stop looking at me, and I'll be good.